for social justice by using the tools and new insights that I hope you will gain from this program and these classes. So I have a lot of information I want to get through, and so if you, but I'm going to leave room at the end for questions. So let me just get through the things that people want to know. Basically, how did we get here in this particular spot that the United States and globally, whatever's happening, that we're not liking very much. So here's some information from geneticists, okay? Molecular studies of DNA have been extremely fruitful in working out the evolutionary history of life. Much of what we know about human ancestry comes from DNA studies, supplemented by a rather spotty fossil record. The DNA evidence strongly supports the idea that the human species originated in Africa, and that European and Asiatic populations, indeed all non-Africans, are descended from a small number of migrants from Africa. The strongest evidence for this is that Africans are more variable in their DNA than other populations. I have seen very dark-skinned Africans with blue eyes. It's all from Africa, folks. I hate to tell you, but this should clear up a lot of things. Some noteworthy evolutionary changes in human beings have occurred relatively rapidly, despite the slow overall rate of changes at the DNA level. The difference between the skin color of Africans and Europeans probably evolved in less than 50,000 years as an adaptation to difference in climate. That makes sense. So as Africans began to migrate and spread out across the known world, some Africans ended up in cold climates, and you're not in the tropics anymore. So of course, the melanin in the skin is going to, over thousands of years, begin to decrease because you're not going to need it. You're also in another part of the world where you have about 3, maybe 4 months to grow crops. In Africa, you didn't have to worry that much about it. You wake up, there are all kinds of things to eat. People's personalities over thousands of years began to change. So yes, there is a difference in people's personalities, people who live in very cold climates and people who live in tropical climates. When people go to tropical climates, they say, oh, the people are so warm and friendly. Well, you would be too if you weren't fighting for food because you had 3 months to grow it. If everything, you didn't have to wear clothes because it's so hot, and that you had a lot of time, since you weren't involved in just barely surviving, as the Africans in the colder climates had to. The personalities developed. So even today, you hear things like, okay, so don't come late. Be on time, literally, because if you have evolved over thousands of years having to deal with survival, because you know the long, cold, dark time is coming, of course, you got to get the crops in. It was a matter of life and death. And a lot of times, as black people joke about, white people's thing about being on time, being on time, being on time. Well, there's a reason for that. Ancestral-wise, there's a reason for that. Then we also joke about black people's time. That means if you're giving a party at 9 o'clock, then start showing up at 10. Okay, we know that. Okay, so but there is a difference. There is a connection between where you landed, and I'm going to call you y'all cousins here, where you landed and how you had to adapt. But we're still all one. So the adaptions, author A.J. Jacobs says, we are all related through our common ancestors, Y chromosomal Adam and mitochondrial Eve, who lived in Africa a few 100,000 years ago. He says, scientists estimate that the furthest cousin on Earth we have is a 70th cousin. Just think about that. Some scientists, geneticists say, so it's somewhere between, they say 53 and 70. We're all cousins. I know everybody says, hey, sister, hey, brother. Okay. More accurately, hey, cuz. All right? There is only one of us. We are 99.9% the same. One geneticist said that the difference is so minute that they don't even bother counting it. So from this DNA, we get all of these wonderful different permutations. Tall and short. We have different colors. Different colors, again, came from the different parts that we all migrated to. And then developed cultures around our surroundings. We're all the same. There's only one of us. So how did we get here to where there's so much, fighting and prejudice, etc.? There's a couple things that we can talk about in terms of how we got here. One of them is if we talk about, I'd like to talk about Africa. And now, before 1884, Europeans had been in Africa. But it wasn't till 1884, actually it was November of 1884 to February of 1885, that the Berlin Conference, 13 European countries divided up Africa. They just said, Africa, by the way, is one of the richest resource continents on the planet. As Europeans had visited Africa before 1884, obviously the United States had been there, the colonies had been there. We weren't United States yet, but colonial times we had been there, and we had the Europeans then at that time began to extract, kidnap, however you want to put it, Africans from different parts of Africa and then bring them to Brazil, South America, and also to the United States. In fact, there are more enslaved Africans that were brought to Brazil, and the United States comes in second on that. So, let's see here. So I'm going to explain colonial history, because this is where white and black was born. White people did not exist in the colonies before 1681. 1681. There's a researcher that went back through all the colonial records up to 1681. There was no reference to white people in the colonies until 1681. So if you were African, because there were Africans in the colonies, mainly around the coastal areas, Virginia. There were Africans who lived in the colonies. They came along with Europeans. Everybody was starting to come immigrate to the colonies. But before 1681, excuse me, before 1681, people identified as, well, I'm English, I'm Swedish, I'm French. So if you asked anyone, that's what they would reply. You know, if you said, well, what are you, or where do you come from? They'll say, well, I came from France. I came from Germany. I came from Sweden. But we were being ruled at the time by the British aristocracy in Britain, and they began to tweak things a little bit. Somewhere around the 1650s, they decided that because there were more men, European men in the colonies than women. So as more women began to come over, they saw black African men, they liked what they saw, and so they began to marry. The Englishmen didn't like that very much, and so there was a miscegenation law that was passed in the 1650s in the colonies, saying, okay, we need to break that up. Englishmen were getting jealous. Now, yes, the first slave ship arrived in 1619. But even though, and there was about 20 enslaved Africans on that ship. But before that, there were Europeans and Africans had all the same rights. Just try to get a picture of what was going on before 1681. Africans had the same rights as Europeans. They could, whether you like it or not, marry who they wanted. They owned land. They had guns. Africans were able to have guns just like Europeans. They could testify against each other in court. All the same rights. Bacon's Rebellion, things began to build in 1676, 1677. Bacon's Rebellion happened. Bacon's Rebellion was basically all people were getting together. They really didn't like the British very much. They really did not like, in Virginia, the British governor in particular. And there was a revolt. Black people, Europeans, you know, some native people, when they weren't fighting with the natives, they were fighting with some, getting along with others. But the British government did not like this disruption in the colonies. And so things drastically changed with this law that was passed for all of the colonies by the British in 1681. It was a major, what they called a miscegenation law. But this was the first time that white was mentioned in 1681. This was a evil, devilishly clever way for the British to break up the coalitions that were going on. I mean, there were indentured servants also at this time. White indentured servants and black indentured servants were running away together. All right, things from the British standpoint, you know, all havoc was breaking loose, and so this was a move for control. So this miscegenation law in 1681 was the first time that they mentioned white and black. This was the birth of this, 1681. So what this law said, they took away all the rights that black people had at the time. If you remember, the British and black people had the same rights. They took away the rights of black people to own guns. And remember, at that time, owning a gun was life and death. You're living in the colonies, you had to, get food. You had to have a gun and ammunition. So they took that away. Black people were no longer able to own land. They were no longer able to testify against white people in court. So generally, they made this division. This was the British way of breaking up any kind of coalitions, especially when it had to do with money, meaning work. All right? So they came up with this plan that we're going to advantage one group and disadvantage the other group. This was the birth of, when people say, oh, there's no such thing as white privilege. Yes, there is. It started in 1681 with that. Now, at first, the Europeans were really confused. Remember, white did not exist. People did not view themselves as white people. They were French. They were German. They came from Sweden. What is this white business? But the British persisted with this. In fact, they made it law. This was law. This is how you were to identify yourself. And so slowly, things evolved in that way. Whether you liked it or not, I mean, this is just common sense, I think. Just common sense. No matter how much, if you were white, no matter how much you may have, not agreed with that, all you have to do was look around and see, okay, I'm getting this, and this. If I say I'm white, and you look at the other group being disadvantaged, not being able to have those things. So over a period of time, you began, white people began to feel a certain way about being white. Black people didn't like that very much, and over a certain time, however, when we talk about internal racism, that's what that is. That is a marker of that, is that society as a whole is saying, you don't deserve to have this, and this because you are that. Imagine over a period of time, and at the same time, slavery, enslaved black Africans were being imported into the colonies. In fact, it only became illegal in 1801. So there's a long period of time where, number one, how you begin to feel about yourself as a white person and a black person develops. I'll get into this later because I have something for everyone, whether you're in the medical profession or whether you're in law enforcement or business people, whatever. I have something for you. You've got to come for the 4 classes. I have something we can talk about how attitudes began to develop. I will say this one thing, and we can talk about it later, but modern day policing began with the slave patrols in the late 1600s. Because as more enslaved people were brought in, I mean, who likes slavery, right? So what's the natural thing you do? You find a way of getting away. You run away. So, and the British were saying, look, and we're talking about wealthy here. We don't like you very much, but this is interfering with our imports, the exports. This is interfering here. So we need, again, this is a form of control. It's all about control. Any ism, racism, I'll give you the definition of that in a minute. It's all a form of control. So here are some not so wealthy white people, and they say, okay, we'll give you a badge and a gun and a horse, and your job is to round up all the escaped slaves. That's your job. And they did make laws from one area to another, from one colony to another. And later, even as we developed into the United States, there were different, if you went to this state and you were there as a black person for a period of time, you could be considered free. But the state that you came from says no, so we're going to go to wherever you are and bring you back. But all of that developed that's the beginning of all of that in the colonies. So it's really important to begin to understand, where did all this come from? It just didn't happen. This was all by design. And it works so well that, over hundreds of years, I call it the 400-year commercial. 400-year commercial. Here are people, just people, before 1681. And then in 1681 onward, we're going to start another narrative. And that is the beginning, at least here in this country, of how this began and where we are today. The 400-year commercial. Now, advertising people say, if we want you to switch toilet paper, we'll give you, let's see, it'll take 12 ads, 15-second ads. Again, this is psychology. And 15-second ads, about 12 times, and you start wondering, should I switch from Charmin to Northern? Okay, and this is over short. You can watch, how many ads do you have? You watch television, how many ads do you see in a day? So it doesn't take long to get you to, to get a Taco Bell Crunch Wrap, when you like, Burger King, all right? But this is all psychological. They know that this is how you get people to shift their perspectives. So, if I can, after 12 commercials, switch you from one toilet paper brand to another, what about 400 years of telling people, you are this, and we're going to give you these goodies if you agree and play along, because it's worth money. And this group over here, again, remember, we're all cousins. You white people, we're cousins. You're just Africans of another color, is how I like to think of it. So, but then you have this other narrative going. The power is about who controls the narrative. And so this narrative has been able to permeate, I'm telling you, it's in the water, it's in the air, it's in the land. This narrative has been able to go forward. So there's conscious and unconscious biases. You have to understand that two things can exist at the same time. You can be the most wonderful, adorable person, and at the same time hold subconscious and unconscious biases about another group. This is not about good people, bad people. That's not what this is about. If you ask me whether, people are born good, or do you feel that people are good or bad, people are good. I'm in that group. People are good. Now, people can be manipulated. They can be uneducated, miseducated, or outright lied to. But underneath, they're still good people. And so what all of this is about, and we'll continue on, what all of this is about is to definitely, and I had it on the paper, you've got to drop guilt, shame, blame, anger. Just drop all of that, because that is not going to help us move forward. None of you in this room were personally responsible for enslavement of African people. So just stop. Stop with that. All right? However, here in the present time, it's what are we going to do about things now? Or what changes am I going to make now in order to move forward with equity for everyone? We're all related. So people ask me, oh, do you think, basically if you ask me, do you think, I'll just say no. Because there's a lot of things that you don't know, and it's much too hard to try to explain it all. But it is, when people say, what are we going to do now, or how do we end this, or whatever, to me, the simple answer is, if you can look at everyone around you, no matter what their narrative is, just say, okay, they're miseducated, it's okay, we're still family, and say, look, there's really only one of us, only one. If you can look and react to things that are happening as if it were a family member that you loved, then what you would do about it, people ask, well, okay, well, what do we do now? Okay, let's just briefly take any other social problem. Let's take hunger. And there's not that same visceral, emotional response to that. So, oh, a person's hungry. Well, let's feed them. Okay? And we'll develop this program and develop this program, and we'll organize and we will feed the hungry people. No problem. So you have to take that same attitude. But you see, I know that you've been subjected to the 400-year commercial. Got it. So that means that this work that you have to do to go inward, to recognize your biases. You see, when you recognize it, then, and acknowledge it, then you can move forward to do something about it. Just like, again, but then instead of having all of the pushback and defensiveness and anger that's around race in this country, the goal is to be able to approach the issues that we're having with the same equanimity that we have when we are dealing with hunger. All right? And so that is the goal. That, and when you can do that, then you can react as if it is your family member that is being hurt. And then there is no question. You don't care whether your neighbor agrees with you or not. You're on it. You're going to do something about that because that's my people. And your neighbor may say, well, no, that's not your people. They're black. Okay. No, you said no. That's my people. The mistake that people are making is that they believe in the lie of separation. Separation is a lie. It's a lie. It's like, can you separate the air in this room from the air in the hallway? Okay. Whoever said they can, you scare me. Okay, so no, you can't. All right? And so when you really ground the idea that oneness is the truth, and the lie of separation says, well, that's happening to those people over there. Those people over there. So we'll just move to another neighborhood. Or they make me uncomfortable. So, we may not say it out loud, but we'll make sure that, we'll organize a system or structure and have that in place so they can't move into our neighborhood. You see. But what people don't recognize is that separation, being the big lie, causes cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance. And we'll touch on that. I might even have a handout for you next time. But cognitive dissonance is when you have a belief that does not match up with a behavior. All right. For example, people who smoke. They smoke knowing, so that's their behavior. The cognitive dissonance is, the belief is, they know that smoking is not good. I mean, their uncle died of lung cancer, but they're still smoking. And there's a discomfort around that. That's cognitive dissonance. And over hundreds of years, the cognitive dissonance that people have had to deal with, when black people have to deal with a white attitude of their cognitive dissonance. Well, yes, I know we're all together, etc. There's only one of us, etc. But I don't want you living in my neighborhood. I don't want you living on my block. I don't care how much money you have. That you are less than. That's the 400-year commercial. But their belief is they manage. Now their heart. Here's your ultimate authority. Your heart is your ultimate authority. You use your heart. Your heart makes the decision. Then you use your mind with the heart to make it a reality. Does that make sense to you? So you have the ultimate authority. I mean, how do people want to say, how do you get rid of cognitive dissonance? You get your belief and your behavior to match. Sometimes it's two conflicting beliefs. So you have to match. So that's cognitive dissonance, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Do you have any questions about anything that I've said up to this point? Because after that, I will hand out your homework. Everybody has a notebook. I got pens up here, the notebooks. If you came late, the notebooks are over there on the table. When I hand out the homework, you're going to journal. You're going to watch the videos. Now, these videos are all on YouTube. I wanted to make it really easy and accessible. So the videos are on YouTube. Watch the videos in order. And then journal about how did that make you feel? What do you think about that? your opinions, etc. And we'll talk about that. We'll talk about those videos the next class. And you'll have your comments or thoughts or questions that may have been generated from watching the videos. Now, next time we meet, I will not allow you to be this silent. Okay? Because one of the things that you need to practice is to learn, is to become comfortable talking about race. This is not something that we can hide from. Things are not going to get better until we can begin to have a dialogue, and you learn how to have a dialogue. That's why you're here. So we're going to practice here. Okay? I want to hear from everybody. I'll be watching. I got to put my glasses on, but I'll be watching. Okay? Because it is the practice. So this is your safe space. All right? You can come here. You have a guide now. We're going to walk through these 4 Sundays. Please come. We're going to handle different topics each one, and it all works together. And there will be questions, I'm sure, that will be generated. So I want you to become comfortable talking. Okay? Because I know white people were not brought up to talk about race. And if you were shut down. Is that correct? It's just not something that families wanted to talk about. Okay, but that didn't help, did it? No. So we know that strategy doesn't work. So we can put that strategy to bed. We will talk about school children, what they should learn in school, etc. That's coming. Don't miss that. We will talk about CRT and all of that, critical race theory and all of that, which they're not being taught in kindergarten. Please don't listen to the hype. Okay.
Excuse me.
Yes?
Will it throw things off if we individually invite people? It's not too late to come the second week.
Sure, you can invite people. Make sure they have watched the videos.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Sure. It'll be a little harder if they're coming to the 3rd, because the videos I'm asking to watch altogether, there'll be 3 each class, and it'll be about 2.5, 3 hours, and you can spread it out during the week. I mean, one might be 40 minutes, another one might be an hour and a half or whatever, so you can spread it out. Grab your friends, grab your family, sit around and watch them together. All right? Drag in as many people together as you can. So I'm here, right here is your homework. You can come in if you want and just take a sheet. I have, let's see, these are some of the definitions that will probably be running, pretty sure we'll be running through these definitions. So grab one of these too. And so bring your journal. Oh, before you go, one more thing. Before you go, I know we're running 2 minutes late. I want to give you a definition of racism. People throw that word around so much and they misuse it. Any ism is about power. Jot that one down. Racism is about power and control. Ageism is about power and control. Sexism is about power and control. You need 3 things in racism. The definition of racism, you have to have prejudice is number 1. Everybody has prejudice. I am prejudiced against okra. I don't care how you cook it.
It's slimy.
It's like snot. I'm sorry. There is nothing you can say. Now, prejudice can be logical or illogical, doesn't matter. All right? We all have prejudice. All right? The second thing you have to have in racism is social power. Social power. The best example I can think of right now is Colin Kaepernick and what happened to him, that young man. There was prejudice. The social power, all those people in the stands had the social power of changing his narrative. He was talking about police brutality, and people had the social power to change his narrative into what they wanted because of the cognitive dissonance. All right? So they changed it into, he doesn't like the military. He hates America. You've probably heard all kinds of, takes on that. So that's the second part, social power. The third is legal authority. So what legal authority was operating for Colin Kaepernick? What happened to him? He was thrown out of the NFL. That is legal authority. Now, so you have to have those three things. So people say, oh, you're a racist and you're a racist. Okay. Can black people be racist? Do black people generally have those three things? Got the prejudice. I can say, I hate you, I hate you, I hate you. Where is the social authority, the social power here? And where is the legal authority? Black people have the legal authority to shut you down? Don't think so. Now, if you're living in an African country with an African government, African people, and as a white person, you come into that environment, black people may have the prejudice. They definitely have the social authority, social power, don't they? One of you, a million of them. And who runs the government? Black people. There's your legal authority. Under those circumstances, if they decide to throw your butt in jail, you're done. And you have the social authority with the people saying, yeah, put her in jail. Or as they did here in the United States, the social power, the social authority, where mobs of white people would drag black people out of jail, helped by the sheriff, and do away with them.
Don't you think that's why elections scare people? Because you give legal authority to people of different races, and then things change.
Well, change is natural.
But I'm thinking, like, we have a black mayor, hallelujah. So that person has social power that somebody else may not have had in the past.
And so
he has money behind him, so that's power. He has social authority. What's your third?
well, there has to be, in terms of racism, which is I'm talking about here.
Right.
Racism, prejudice, and then social power, and then legal authority. You would have to have those three. Now you remember, yeah, you may have a black mayor, but who's the governor? The mayors are under the governor. How many black governors do we have? The king of the country of Ohio. Because basically we are those little kingdoms. That's how we developed, right? We developed in those little kingdoms. The kingdom of Alabama, the kingdom of Georgia, the kingdom of Mississippi, the kingdom of Ohio. Okay? The pandemic brought that out very, very, very clearly. We can't do anything to help you, go to your governor. Okay? So that shows you how power is applied and how it works. But I wanted you to hear, I wanted you, and we can discuss racism again, but those are the 3 things that you need in order to be racist. If that racist a person, now you can be prejudiced, all right? But in terms of black people being racist, only under certain conditions. I can be prejudiced, but unless I have the social power and legal authority to do something about you, doesn't matter. You can go off in your corner and cry about it, but you're not in power. Remember, all of this is about power. It's all about power. Okay?
So can I ask you one question about that? So where do you think women fall in that explanation then? Because I would say I don't think women in general have the power and the authority in general.
You have several things working here. In terms of power, this is generally a patriarch, all right? So who holds, I saw a picture of special committees, all right? All white men at least the age of 50 and above making decisions about women's health in Washington. I thought it's stunning. It is a stunning picture to look at. So you see like maybe 20, 25 white men sitting at this huge conference table. And their job is to legislate, what women can do and cannot do in terms of women's health care. They're the ones making the decision. So, if you remain silent about how your government is working, see, there's so much cognitive dissonance. Part of your brain says this, and then the other part says this. When people can become clear, that's one of the first things I put on a piece of paper. In order to make a change, you have to be clear about what do I want and why do I want it. And the why I want it is even more important than the what. You have to be clear about what you're doing. This is something I've told all of my clients, and the ones that really want to change will go home and try. The others will get up, thank you very much, and go look for another counselor who will give them the answer that they want to hear. Okay? So like I said, I had this written down because I could talk to all of you forever, and you would never leave, but the football game starts at 1. Okay, and so I promised that I would get everybody out of here. So please come, I will be here next Sunday. Come and get one of these sheets. Here's your homework.
Thank you.